Hi everyone, I'm Linda Reed-Enever. I'm the founder of Business, Business, Business. And I'm excited to be back with another skills webinar, and it's our second last skills webinar for the year with Stephen Brown. Stephen is joining us. He's a regular and a well-known person around the BBB group, joining us this week to talk to you about distribution agreements and what we should be looking for. And I'm talking, we've got members, particularly in this area, Stephen, on both sides of the fence. We've got members who are distributing their products, and then we have got people who are doing distribution agreements. So this should be an interesting, fun one this morning. Guys, as I've said to you previously, if you're watching the live stream, try and head to the Zoom link and click on that one and register for it to make sure that you're here to answer questions. I will watch the live stream as much as I can to answer questions, but you know, the technology gods don't always work the way you would like it. So we will get this started. And Stephen, welcome, and thank you for joining us for another skills webinar again. It's awesome to see you.
Linda, always a pleasure.
Oh, that's lovely.
Always.
Now, I will apologise in advance, guys. I'm coming off a flu cold thing, so if I cough during the middle of this one, I'll try and mute myself, but just apologising in advance.
Summer cold's not good.
Oh, I know. Just ask the man version.
Yeah, man version is much worse.
Actually, this time I have to agree. He just seems to have got it worse than Charlotte and I did. So, Stephen, what is a distribution agreement? Let's just start there for those who maybe don't even know what it is.
A distribution agreement is basically, I think, a good way to look at it. It's where the distributor is a retailer.
Yep.
Like a retail corner store.
Yep.
And the distributor is selling products which aren't their own. And the distributor, the actual distributor themselves can get a great reputation for selling goods. They market them very well, but ultimately they will not own the goodwill in the goods that they're selling.
Yep, good point.
And they will only have the distribution agreement for a limited period of time.
Okay.
And so for those who are the distributors in the country or outside, you really need to ensure that the profitability of what you're doing is essentially cash flow positive from day one.
Yep.
Or very close to it, because if not, you're losing out on profit. And there's been lots of cases that I've been involved with where one particular multinational that we act for, who will go nameless.
that's maybe wise.
Yes. Even in this venue with Chatham House rules, we still won't go there. They often lose the skills to be able to distribute, for example, cosmetics very well. And someone will approach them and say, can we act as your distributor? And that person has the skills and the ability to grow and expand the brand. And they do a fabulous job. And then the big multinational says, they're making profits where we should be making profits. Thank you very much. Your distribution agreement has come to a natural end and we're not renewing it.
Yep.
Or they may find some excuse to terminate early, and the distributor is left with no ability to do anything about it. So distribution agreements are great. They are fabulous for the organisation wanting to have their brand expanded in an area. But from the retailer, the quasi-retailer's perspective, you need to be making a profit from the sale of your products as soon as possible, because that is all you're going to get. Yeah. You don't have longevity.
You don't get a customer database or anything like that.
Well, you might get a customer database, and you might be able to go to a competing brand if they're not there, and you may be able to do something with it. But a lot of times, like if I'm writing a distribution agreement for a manufacturer, we do require that the customer list belongs to the manufacturer.
Cool.
And that the distributor cannot use it post-event, post the distribution coming to an end. Now, of course, if the distributor can negotiate contrary then that's fine. If you're acting for the distributor, and therefore if I was acting for the distributor, we would be arguing that both parties should be able to use the list, because the bigger the company, the less bargaining power the distributor will have in the relationship. It depends. At the beginning of a relationship,
Yep.
distributors may have a good degree of bargaining power. As they build it up, though, funnily enough, they actually lose control because the manufacturer sees the profit that they're missing out of, and they're not inclined to allow the distributor to take their margin anymore.
So if now we've got a number of members, and Stephen, you know a couple of these because we've been working on them for a while, and I'm looking at it from this point of view on this story this morning. But guys, if you've got a question, seriously ask it, because it's going to help us along the lines here of making sure this webinar is more relevant to you. We've got one at the moment who's going to retail stores, who is out there selling the product. It's a great product, a fantastic product. If you were doing something like that, if you were talking about someone who's taking, and there's not one, there's multiple members inside BBB who've got their product and they're taking it to a distribution channel at the moment. They're either going to retail stores and being the distribution person themselves. What advice would you give those people who are looking at getting someone else to sell their products?
If they can find the person that's willing to take it on, I'd give it to them.
Yep.
The things that you would need to look at is to set minimum key performance criteria.
Yep.
And that is that the distributor needs to say, what will be the minimum sales per accounting period, be it quarterly, half yearly or yearly.
Yep.
And you would want to say to that person, okay, if you want to have this as exclusive, then you must meet these key performance indicators.
Yes.
If you fail, then our options are to terminate your agreement or to make it non-exclusive.
Yep.
So the distributor can continue to work, but they will be competing with other distributors in the marketplace. And again, from the manufacturer or owner, the product owner's perspective, and we'll call them the owner.
Yep. Yeah, the product owner. Yep.
What I often suggest from a tactical perspective is to say to them, go to your prospective distributor and ask the prospective distributor what key performance indicators they think they can meet. The reason being is that most, and no offence, salespeople, but salespeople always...
Lovely organisations are salespeople.
They are, but they're always glass half full people.
Of course we are.
And therefore they will overestimate their key performance targets, and therefore from the owner's perspective, they corner the distributor to overestimate something,
yes,
and therefore put a lot of pressure on the distributor to actually achieve the results they're saying they're going to achieve. So from the owner's perspective, I really strongly suggest you do that. From the distributor's point of view,
yes,
it's fair that the owner does that, but be realistic with your targets.
Yeah.
Especially with products you've not been in the market with.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you're better off overachieving than underachieving.
Are you up for a case study or playing an idea this morning? Because no one's asking us questions at the moment.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking. So I have got the Business Life Planners. They've literally come into stock at the moment. We distribute them via the websites that we run, which are crazily enough. So if I wanted to, and I'm just, bear in mind that I haven't got an ISBN on these and they don't have a barcode. So most of the bookstores don't like me, but that's because we order them in small lots and make sure that they go out. But if I was going to, I'm just thinking, well, let's look at that. We've got a product here that is distributable for on what I call a very, very short period of time. Really by March, these are dead.
Yep.
But we've got that, and we've got the 5-minute marketing cards. I've spoken to a local retailer here who said, I really like the Business Life Planner. I'd like to stock a few of those. I'm looking at a consignment arrangement with her because then it's no risk for,
Yep.
for either one of us. But if someone else was in the same boat, looking at maybe a consignment arrangement or looking at a stock arrangement, what would you do? Although, Stephen, you've got this baby, what would you do with it?
Oh, look, I think consignment arrangements are fabulous.
Yep.
Especially if you've already got the stock.
Yes.
It is better to have it out there and being marketed than stuck in a warehouse somewhere.
Exactly.
And if you can't convince someone that your product is that fabulous that they want to pay you for it immediately and keep it in their stock, then selling it on consignment is certainly the way to go. What you need to do, though, now is that if the value of the goods you are placing on consignment is substantial, you should register a personal properties and security registration.
Okay, cool.
On it. The reason being is that if you don't put your imprimatur on your goods,
Yep.
a bank can come in, assess your goods as the assets of your store,
Yep.
and then if they were ever to put a receiver in, especially around Christmas time, which is a often and fun time for banks to do that.
Oh, they like that bit.
Yes, they love that about the 24th, 4 p.m. on the 24th of December when all the cash and receipts are there. They're often putting people in. Then they will come along and take those goods, and without you having a PPSR, you'll have no security over those goods.
Awesome.
Even though you're the ownership of them, you will lose that ownership to the bank. So if they're worth...
That's something I had no clue about this morning.
There's a lot of value in it. And to do a PPSR, you do it as part of your contract for consignment.
Yep.
Put it in the same contract, and it costs $7 to go online and register it. So it's certainly worth doing.
So for those of you guys who are looking at doing your stock like this, please consider this sort of stuff. And Stephen's here to help you. Seriously, he's the most legal. You don't do legalese, well, you do, but you do it in a way that we can all understand it, which is what I love about talking with Stephen and having these conversations with him around different topics and distribution agreements. So, obviously the sales rep in me, what's the money up front for the product? Because I don't have to worry about, if you pay me for the product, it's your problem, you deal with it, you think you make sales. Okay, but if we can't do that, then the sales rep in me goes, well, I still would like a sale. So I might put it in on a consignment for 3 months. And if you make a certain amount of sales, then it's a purchase agreement. Is that muddying the water? Or because I still want them to actually commit to buy. So here's my little teaser.
No, that would be fine. Again, provided your contract is clear.
Yep.
And that's all specified, there's no issue with that at all.
Fantastic. So I'm going to keep opening conversations and reminding our members that you can ask questions of Stephen. So please do come through and ask questions today. We've got lots of people watching us, but no questions at the moment, Stephen. So I'm waiting for them to come through. But if you've got a question, pop us directly into the live stream on the BBB page or into this situation here and ask us a question. Of course, Facebook wanted to disappear that live stream straight off my camera right now. So give me 2 seconds. Let me just
Linda, another issue that
go for it. You keep going.
Is relevant is that if you are a distributor of overseas product, please remember that's if you're the actual importer of those goods, which likely you would be, you are the deemed manufacturer of that good in Australia.
Okay.
So if there is a product recall, it's on you. If there's an injury, it is on you. If there is a death, it is on you.
Oh my gosh.
And you cannot get out of that. That is caught by the Australian or the Competition and Consumer Act, and it's embedded within Schedule 2, which is the Australian Consumer Law. Now,
this affects all the Alibaba, like here, buy this stuff on drop shipping and make your business type situation. Or no, I'm sorry, I just see that stuff popping up on my newsfeed at this time of year so often.
Alibaba, it would be slightly different because they're the ones, because you are, the actual consumer is Alibaba.
Yep.
So the importer in that case is the consumer.
Is the consumer.
So you would be covered by the contract that you have with Alibaba. We're talking about a distributor who's importing container loads of product.
Okay, yep.
And the distributor imports even one container or half a container.
Yep.
And yet then they resell it to a wholesaler or to an end user. So far as the law is concerned within the Australian jurisdiction, that distributor, the importer, is a deemed manufacturer. Now, you can and should, if you are able to, negotiate what we call a back-to-back indemnity from the overseas manufacturer to say, well, if we, I think the technical term is, if we cock up in making something that results in the death or injury of someone and you have to make a payment in Australia, we'll compensate you.
Yep.
But you can't force your customers in Australia to go and chase manufacture overseas. They're legally able to chase you,
yep.
and you're liable to make reparations as the law requires you to make within Australia.
So we're talking about container loads and those sorts of things, but, well, you know, if members are looking at doing that, like I'm thinking that, well, we've got members who maybe bring in jewellery, we've got members who are bringing in manufacturing clothing and clothing lines overseas. So they are the manufacturer here in Australia.
They are the manufacturer here in Australia.
Okay. So while we're on that topic of manufacturing product overseas and getting your stuff done, and look, it needs to be done because, you know, to be price competitive out there, sometimes it can't be done in Australia. What else should we be looking for in that agreement? If we've got someone, you know, making our clothes or making our swimwear or making our, you know, little USB things or whatever we're getting done.
Things to also consider are the currency risk.
Yep.
If you're paying in a different currency other than Australian dollars, that currency can move adversely against you.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you've agreed to pay $1 per widget, and that's $1 US, and the dollar devalues and it goes down to 50 cents from 60 cents,
yep.
rather than paying $1.40 Australian per widget, you'll be paying $1.50. And there's not much you can do about that. Other than if you contract in Australian dollars with the overseas manufacturer,
yep.
you would need to have a lot of bargaining power for the overseas manufacturer to even want to talk to you on those terms.
What way? The Australian dollar is so awesome, Stephen. I don't understand.
You can then go into hedging transactions and things of this nature, such that what you can do is that if you're importing container loads of material,
yep.
you can go out into the market immediately and transfer your Australian dollars at the current rate, which is known as the spot rate, to the currency you need to pay in, have that money sitting in a bank so that when the goods do arrive, you'll have the funds to pay them, if you've got those sort of funds available,
yep.
at the appropriate rate so it doesn't go up or down. The challenge, though, is that the Australian dollar could appreciate.
Yep.
And then you would actually be paying more in Australian dollars rather than less. So if it went to $1.80 to $1.80, if the Australian dollar was $1.20 to the Australian dollar, as opposed to $1.40, then you'd actually be increasing your margin. So you do take a risk. So if you're getting involved with hedging transactions, you may need to hedge your bets on those and maybe go 50% and then take the risk on the adverse, or monitor it, and should it be going in the wrong direction, manage the risk that you're taking from time to time. Mm-hmm. So currency risk, the fact that you are the deemed manufacturer.
Yep.
Look at product liability insurance within Australia.
Yes.
Because of the liability you have as the deemed manufacturer, taking out that insurance is worthwhile. if you have, 100 container loads of stuff and you have a product recall, then you've got to recall that.
Yeah.
And you may not have a choice, and that can be very expensive. So having insurance to do that is certainly useful. Even with clothing, if the clothing that you get manufactured overseas, if it's treated, say, in an alkaline wash and it's not properly cleansed, then the consumers could end up with dermatitis, and you'll be liable for that.
Okay, how's everyone feeling?
Yeah.
That dropshipping business importing product just looks slightly a little bit different.
Importing stuff is a real challenge.
Yeah.
And if you are importing, you've got to make sure that your rights are exclusive to your jurisdiction.
Yep.
Because otherwise, if you're in Perth and you have a non-exclusive agreement and there's another distributor in Sydney, then you could end up with someone in Sydney transferring their stock to Perth, and you couldn't stop them at all. So,
no, absolutely.
If, however, you have exclusive rights for that state, you can, getting a registered trademark agreement, prevent the parallel importation of goods from an eastern state. And
so you would trademark for that state only. Is that the plan?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Interesting. This is so much. So this is why I like making my own stuff and having control, because looks like the control freak in me is a good position to be in at the moment, Stephen.
Being a control freak is very good when you're in these types of situations.
Okay, so we've had, I'm just running through both Clive and my client base, and through people that are putting information out there in distribution channels in those particular areas. What if you were the retailer or the distributor and those sorts of things, and you're maybe setting up an online store, for example, and you're wanting to sell something like the Business Life Planner, or you're wanting to sell someone else's product? What have you got to do to protect yourself there?
Now,
because there's lots of people that are sold that as a business package. Here's your online store, here's your suppliers.
We need to break down what we're actually talking about.
Yep.
If it's, say, something like Alibaba or Amazon,
yes,
a lot of those stores we think we're buying from Amazon, but in truth we're actually buying from
a retailer. And
it's their contract that regulates. Amazon and Alibaba are merely the marketing platform that facilitates the transaction.
Yep.
And they are not the actual seller. So in the example you're giving, the question that needs to be differentiated, or the positions that need to be differentiated, are scenario one, if you're taking on board the goods of another person and you're then selling them, then there will be liabilities that you take on.
Yep.
If you are selling them on consignment, and for example, Apple and Miele.
Yep.
If you go to a retail store, and if you're going to Myers or David Jones or that,
mm-hmm.
you will find that the contract you have for Apple or for Miele is not with Myer or David Jones.
It's with
It's actually with the manufacturer or distributor within Australia, and they sell it as the manufacturer's agent.
Yes.
And therefore, in that case, you're dealing directly with that entity. So
wow.
you need to, again, differentiate what situation you're in to actually analyse the legal issues, because they're different.
Exactly. We've got a question from Kate. Kate imports branded cosmetics to sell on her inline store in Australia. She has no agreement in place. She thinks she should be speaking to a solicitor about having an agreement drawn up. Are we gifting away some time for people to talk to you today? Is that the plan?
We can do that,
We
absolutely.
can do that. Beautiful. So if you reach out, I will pop Stephen's website on the link on the live stream, Kate, for you. If you reach out to Stephen, you can have a chat with him. And seriously,
and we can remember or remind everyone that we do have a new client start package, which we call the Kickstart package.
yes,
We will do your legal work for 12 months, where you pay no money up front other than for government costs and charges. And at the end of 12 months, what legal fees you've incurred becomes a capitalised sum, and then you pay that off by 12 equal monthly instalments. So if you want to get a good platform and you want to get a proper distribution agreement and you want to protect yourself, you can do that without any money down.
wow. Look, Stephen, I thought that was such a good agreement when you first came up with it. So I'm popping a link into Stephen's website now so that you can jump in and do that. Stephen's been a long time BBB member, guys. You know, gosh, well, Charlotte's turned 10 and you took her out for her 8th birthday.
Yeah.
So she's got about to turn 11 next year. So that, let alone, and we were working at least years before that with Stephen.
Because of the Me Too movement, can we, for full disclosure, say that you and Clive were also there?
Yes. Yes, her parents were at. So was your mum. You know, it was a lovely family evening.
Exactly, but very careful these days of these things.
Yeah, and especially that child is way too smart and happens to know things.
Yes.
Okay, so here is the link to Stephen's website for anyone who's watching this that wants to book in a conversation with him. But I look, in all honesty, guys, I cannot stress enough that Stephen does this, and he works with many of Clive and my client base on a regular basis on helping them get their legals together in situations. And there's been many a client that we've worked with together. So, and we're both still alive. Yep. And we haven't killed each other, so it's obvious, and we talk in situations like this. So that's a really good one. So yeah, okay, let's even just explore Kate's question a bit further. She has no agreement in place.
If you're looking for every transaction that you do, Kate, is a one-off contract with the person you're acquiring the cosmetics from.
Yep.
If they choose to cease selling to you, then you have no comeback because they're not obliged to sell to you if they don't wish to.
Mm-hmm.
Consequently, if you want some certainty and longevity of supply, you do need to have a contract with them. All business relationships in reality are based upon actual trust.
Yes.
And if trust is there, you don't really need a contract. But because we don't know the people with whom we deal with on a regular basis, we have implicit trust created through contractual documents. And then you move from the fact that these are trust building documents to looking at them as checklists of who's doing what, when's it to be done, and how's it to be done. And if you look at them as management tools in that light, they're not frightening prospects. It's simply getting them right. So you've got to work out, what do you want from your supplier? You probably want them to back you up if there's a product issue. And at least raising it with them, if they say no, you then at least know that you've got support there.
Yep.
And that's not to say you shouldn't import the product. I'm not one, unless it's illegal, I'm not one to say you can't do something. The proposition, though, is at least you're making an informed decision of the risk you are taking.
Yes.
And you know what you're doing. And that way you can work out, is the profit that I'm expecting to make worth the risk that I'm taking?
Absolutely. And all businesses have risks somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the biggest challenge with most businesses, the biggest challenge with most business people is they don't know the risk because they're not experts in that area. For example, how many of the people here this morning were cognizant of the fact that they are the deemed manufacturer in Australia of anything they import?
Yeah.
And what you also need to be careful of is when you have multiple importers,
Yep.
each of them are the manufacturer, each of them are the deemed manufacturer. The challenge, though, is that if you've got 2 or 3 within one state and party A imports and the batch that they've got is fine, party B imports and the batch they've got's fine, party C imports and that particular batch is bad, then C may not know who the customers of C may not know who they got it from. And you could end up having to deal with a dispute that was not of your making or not even a product that you made any profit from.
Because you are the deemed manufacturer.
Well, because you're one of the deemed manufacturers. The actual customer may be aware of you, of A or B being the importer, but not aware of C.
Oh, okay.
And so certain products under the Trade Descriptions Act must disclose who the importer is.
Yep.
But other products don't, like food and clothing generally must disclose who the importer is.
Mm-hmm.
Tractors don't.
What a large piece of machinery that you would actually like to know who was responsible for.
Well, you would think, exactly. But you can import tractors, and what happens is that there's one particular factory in China that manufactures various forms of tractors, and they're sold to different people in Australia, and the people in Australia label them with their own little labels.
Oh, wow.
But if those labels fall off at any point in time, because they're not required to be there, unlike a car with a registration, the VIN and the chassis number is not required on a tractor. If that plate falls off, then the customer will choose, well, who the hell's importing this? If they go on the internet and they type in something, they could find a totally different person to commence legal action over.
And your SEO was great for that keyword, so there you go. That's like, this is really where you need someone like you to go through the legal minefield of what this is. And you and I talk about legal minefields all the time, but really go through that legal minefield to make sure that you are prepped and you are safe in those zones.
Otherwise, it'll blow up in your face, just like my video.
Yes, for those of you who missed the Small Business Skills Summit, Stephen had great effects this year in his videos, and minefield effects and those sorts of things. Okay, guys, I'm going to we've got a few more minutes before we need to wrap up this skills webinar today. I'm going to open it up and allow our Facebook area to have time for a few more questions, especially if you are in this arrangement. Stephen, what would be your checklist for people leaving the webinar today for both sides of the party? Small couple of checklists before
the period of time for your distribution agreement.
Yep.
Key performance indicators. An indemnity from the manufacturer to stand behind their goods.
Yep.
Services. It would be good to have an agreement where maybe the manufacturer and the distributor shared product liability, but I rarely ever see that. It's really up to the distributor, but it doesn't hurt to ask. The fact that the distributor in Australia from an overseas product can be the registered trademark user and have it registered to prevent, to some degree, parallel importing of product. The cost of the goods, are they going to be fixed? Are they going to be tied? Are they a percentage of manufacture? What are they? The currency in which the goods are in. If there's a dispute between you and the manufacturer, which country's laws govern that dispute? China or Australia or Singapore? And there are rules as to whether you can jurisdiction shop. And I won't get into that because they get very...
That sounds like a whole other session.
It's a whole other session. But that in that particular session, there could be a lot more jargon being used.
Ah.
Because that is a very, very technical area. Highly charged with legal gobbledygook,
Yes.
that particular area. From a distributor's point of view, what I try to do is to have a term that is not ending.
Yep.
Provided the KPIs are met, the agreement rolls over from year to year to engender longevity of the distributor.
Yep.
And ultimately, at a point in time, a manufacturer will want the right to be able to terminate, but at least they can give you at least 12 months notice.
Yeah.
But I've had distribution agreements that I've terminated for clients on 30 days notice. Another thing to be careful about are the weaselly word ways in which terms can be written.
Yes.
You will often see the term of this agreement is 4 years.
Yep.
Unless otherwise terminated in accordance with the terms of this agreement. And you then go to the termination clause, and the termination clause say either party can terminate this agreement on 30 days notice.
Yeah.
So although it appears in clause 2 or 3 that you have a fixed immutable 4-year term, it's not. It's a 30-day agreement.
Yeah. I've just watched a particular business go through something similar. They had a distribution agreement, the 12 months came up, and they were expecting everything was great. It's no longer great.
No. It comes back to exactly what I said at the very beginning. You need to ensure that your distribution agreement makes money from day one.
Day one. Yep.
Is it? You've got to sit down with the manufacturer and say, look, I'm going to be spending this money. These are the losses I'm going to be sustaining for this period of time. In order for it to make it worth my while to be your distributor, this is the term, the minimum term I'm going to need. And just talk to them in business terms.
Yep.
It's not a legal issue. It's a commercial issue, and your lawyer's not going to know that.
Yep.
So
they're not going to know your costs. No.
So when you're dealing with a lawyer, you've got to tell the lawyer these practical things so we can help you negotiate your terms properly, because we don't know what we don't know, and those things we don't. And a lot of lawyers who aren't doing this regularly won't ask the appropriate questions.
Kate's just said she's taken a wealth of knowledge and wealth of notes. She had no idea this morning that she was a deemed manufacturer by bringing in products. So there we go. That's really, really big things that we need to take a look at. Now, guys, Stephen, long-time member of BBB. You can find him via our Connect directory. I'm sure we'll have another webinar with you next year, Stephen, when we return, because you and I like chatting.
We do.
We do like a conversation. But if you haven't, seen today's webinar and you want to catch something else, Stephen has replays in the skills library. When I put the replay up, you'll be able to see it there. He also has an episode with Clive on the Business Conversations podcast, which means I've got to get him in to talk so that, Clive doesn't beat me and have him in more spaces than I do. So that will be all very, very exciting for us in the new year. Stephen, thank you. You've done 4 webinars with us this year. Thank you for giving up your time to the community and sharing that information. I cannot stress strongly enough, guys, this is the gentleman that when my Facebook page was hacked was the first person I messaged. And set me on the right path for what I needed to know and calmed me down and explained everything that I needed to know along that journey. So please, make sure that you go through that person. And Stephen, we've spoken about this a number of times, but this is a really important thing about working with a lawyer who knows your business inside, in and out, because he was able to talk to me, what I needed to do, knew my business, and we had we've been open in conversations, so we knew what the business was, and those conversations when how much is that going to cost you to do that, to have that relationship and have this product for the number of years, that starts to become a little bit of second nature because he gets to know how you operate. So book in a time. I'm not sure do you have a booking calendar on your website, or do we need to get you one of those? We need to get you a booking calendar at some stage.
I have one from my website.
Yep.
Yeah, there is one on the website, I'm sure.
Okay, there's a booking calendar on the website, guys. If I find the link, or Stephen can send it, or Suzanne can send it to me, we will have it.
More likely, Suzanne. That's getting a bit beyond my tech.
Suzanne, if you're watching, can you please send me the booking link to Stephen's calendar, please? Okay, thank you for joining us today. There is no more questions coming from the community, but I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I now know what to do with consignment agreements too. So this is great.
Very good. Well, I'm sorry, I don't think we'll be there on the 6th, but we're going to try.
And for those, and what Stephen's talking about, guys, is that it's the Business Celebration Ball. On the 6th of December, we are all getting together. We have the Small Business Ombudsman from Kate Carnell joining us. I hopefully, fingers crossed, Stephen can, magically magic works and happen to get there. So far we've got 25 amazing business owners taking over the ballroom with us. It would be lovely to see everyone else there. I will pop the link back into the chat as well so that everyone can get into that one. Tickets are $2.97 and it gets you access to it gets you a 3-course dinner, drinks for between the 7 and 10:30 a.m. To 10:30 p.m. You're coming down now. You're coming down now. I thought so. Drinks between 7 and 10:30, and then we wrap up at 10 o'clock. But it's all supporting the Mirabelle Foundation too. So your ticket goes through and supports a really good cause. These kids from the Mirabelle Foundation unfortunately come from drug-affected families, and that's good. That's a way that we can support and show things through. Plus, you get an opportunity to talk to the lady who adjudicates things for small business and talks about small business. So why not come and say hi to Kate and have a conversation, let alone have a conversation with us, and dress up and get in there. But we do need tickets in by Friday because there's catering stuff and all of that sort of stuff that we need to organise with the venue. So hopefully, Stephen, we hit the full 90 attendees that we can get in there. But, tickets are starting to come in more and more this week. So the accounts team are less chasing me. Going, well, what was this ball idea of yours, Linda? So guys, it's a great way to get out and network and have that end of year Christmas party. As I mentioned, Payman is joining us next week. That will be our last skills webinar for the year. business.com.au/skills. That will take you through to register for that one. And he's talking about creating presentations with impact. Suzanne will like that one, by the way.
I think I've actually mentioned I might join that as well.
Oh, yay! It's all about creating powerful presentations.
Sorry, isn't it the 3rd of December? You've got advertising.
That's the 3rd. Sorry, yeah, bear with me. That's our second last one. Sorry, did I say next week? Yes, no, it's the 3rd. It's the 3rd or 4th of December, that one.
Yes, 3rd or 4th. That's what I thought. I think it's the 3rd. It's the week of the ball. So yeah, it'll be it's a really good opportunity for you to come in and do visual presentations and just see how you can create impact with your presentation. So death by PowerPoint is less boring. As I like to say to people, no one wants to do death by PowerPoint if we can avoid it, which is why we have a conversation, Stephen, isn't it? Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. For those of you who joined us, thank you for joining us today. For those of you watching the replay, we hope you enjoy it. Do contact Stephen, do register for the next webinar, do attend the ball, and I will see you at our last skills webinar for the year. Stephen, once again, thank you for joining us. This has been a great conversation.
Thanks, Linda.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Talk to you soon. Bye.